Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So it's very early. If you don't know where I am, I'm in mainland Spain. It's very early in the morning. It is 7:39. Sorry, I'm a little bit late coming on the stream. I got into Twitter, started reading some tweets and things and getting annoyed with people on there, and ended up being a little bit late for the stream. So the reason I'm doing this stream so early in the morning is I wanted to talk about what happened yesterday, the fantastic guilty verdict for Richard Allen. I wanted to look at a debrief from one of the news channels that we've been following a few of their videos and that look at their final debrief from the case. I'm a little bit hungover this morning because I did quite a bit of celebrating last night. I didn't have to drive yesterday. My son wasn't working. So I think it's better when he is working and I don't have to drive. But, so I felt a little bit woolly-headed this morning when I got up. And I thought, right, I'm going to because I've got a lot of Spanish classes. Those of you who don't know, I'm a Spanish teacher, so I've got quite a lot of classes today. And I'll be going into class soon. I thought, no, I want to do this video. I'm going to do it before I start work because I feel so emotional and happy emotional for Abbi and Libby's family in this the Delphi murder trials, that they've got justice. When it looked like maybe they wouldn't for various reasons, didn't it? Now, I'm going to light a candle, first of all, for Libby and Abbi and for their families. I mean, it'll be a cold comfort because at the end of the day, what we've got to remember is these families, they've still lost their girls. And these two young girls, 13 and 14, when their life ended. So I hope maybe you'll join me in lighting a candle for them. They would be in their 20s now. They'd be coming into their 20th years. Their lives would be just starting. They've lost so much, and their families have lost so much by losing them. It's indescribable. It's indescribable, isn't it? It's unimaginable. So although they'll feel that fleeting, jubilance, I suppose, that somebody at least has been found accountable for these awful murders, doesn't bring their girls back. So they've still got to face every day without their daughters, and all the things that they've missed out on. And all a lot of people can do. Oh, by the way, I want to say hello to everybody watching at home. Hello to everyone watching on replay. There won't be many people in the chat yet because, hi, Angel. Couldn't you sleep? Couldn't sleep. Hi, good morning. It's probably just me and you at the moment. So hello to people who'll be watching later on replay, etc. Gosh, I've lost my thread now. So this is my second coffee. I need 2 coffees before I come round, so I'm not quite 100% right with it yet. Oh, so yeah, a lot of people get this. So I've never known a case. I mean, it has been a very divisive case, as we know. A lot of people think there wasn't enough evidence to convict Richard Allen, but patently there was, because he's been found guilty on unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts. So don't forget, we didn't see everything that the jury saw. So we didn't hear the audios. It was a private trial, was not televised. The judge decided. There's still a gagging order on what happened in the trial, so nobody can talk about it. Nobody involved in the case can talk about it yet until maybe after the sentencing. So the only thing we know about what actually happened in the trial is from people who were there, who took notes, etc., and reported it back to us. So obviously the jury did get enough information that led them to a guilty verdict. And, we'd have to accept it if it was an innocent verdict or if it was a hung jury. We'd have to accept it. We have to accept whatever verdict it is, because that's where the way the justice system works. But so many people. Now, I just want to show you some of the one of the comments in particular, because to me this is just typical of people who are supporting Richard Allen. I don't understand why you're supporting someone who's murdered two young girls, slit their throats. You know, people getting real, and not only supporting them. Now, it's one thing to say, oh, well, I'm not sure there was enough evidence, you know, that's fair enough. But to be so nasty. So this woman on Twitter, I'm assuming she's a woman. Oh, funnily enough, her name's Karen. I noticed she's changed her name to a C. Because she's some Karen. But this is the lovely picture of Libby that her family released. The family released after the verdict. So she's determined, free Richard Allen, free Richard Allen. She's British. Unfortunately, makes me ashamed of being British. And I'll tell you why. Not because of supporting Richard Allen. I bear in mind her profile picture on Twitter is her kids. So this is a mother. She said later on down here, where is it? Someone posted this: who drinks wine while playing games with kids of Kamala Harris? Well, I don't know, but you don't even, why, anyway, I'm not going into that. But I'm sorry, alcohol is required when dealing with kids. I think this is Karen's problem. Maybe she drinks a little bit too much alcohol, because one of the comments she put on my comment, who I don't even know her, she's not a follower of mine or anything. These are her comments. She's called me a mong. Mong, twice. 2 comments she put on my comments. Yeah. She has you mong. Who uses that word mong anymore? That's a word. It's a disgusting word. It's a disgusting word. Somebody here has put, wrong guy. Fair enough, he thinks he's the wrong guy. But this Karen, it's a very appropriate name, called me a mong twice. And then I said, oh, you're nice, aren't you? And she said, I'm fucking delightful. I'm a fucking delight. This is a mother who's got her young kids as her profile picture. So my heart goes out. So I think also I'm lighting this candle for her kids, because I do feel like her kids just might need it. What a nice lady. So I think maybe she'd had a few scoops when she put these posts on. Let's hope that's not her normal personality, to call me a mong, refer to me as a mong, and swear away on her own Twitter with the profile picture of her kids. So Karen, and she's British, which makes me a little bit ashamed of being British, but you know what I mean? These are the type of people that you do get, of course, on social media. I don't think Richard Allen would, maybe I wouldn't be that proud of having someone like that as a supporter. So I wanted to show you that. Have a good day, Karen. Anyway, obviously, I have, told her that I think it's awful what she said. But she then came back, called me a mong again, and then said she's a fucking delight. So nice girl, nice woman. Anyway, there you go. Just wanted to show you that. No, she's called Karen. Hi, musical. Yeah. So this is what makes me laugh. Like, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, what's the evidence? Well, the evidence is over 60 confessions that he made. He put himself on the bridge. He said himself he was on the bridge. The bullet thing was there. There's lots of evidence. The only thing that's missing is DNA, and I think that's what people are hung up on, personally. I think Richard Allen is guilty, and I think he will probably confess. He's tried to confess, bless him. You can't say that he hasn't tried to confess, but, and maybe at that time, if he would have been allowed to have confessed, instead of, his wife and lawyers and everybody saying to him, no, 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 don't confess, maybe his soul would have some peace. Because you know what, that guy, he needs to confess, really. This was the reason he gave for confessing, wasn't it? Because he found God and he wants to see his family in the next life. And that's apparently why he wanted to confess. And he confessed not under duress, calmly, to his wife, to his mom, to his psychologist, to prison officer. He confessed so many times, and none of those times were under duress. And he wanted to save his soul. And I think he will confess again if he's given a chance to. Now they're going to appeal. There's going to be an appeal. So I don't think the appeal will get any traction whatsoever, but there's going to be an appeal, but after the sentencing. So the judge decided to put a gagging order on this case, didn't she? Because I think maybe because it was so high profile, she refused to allow in any this is what some people are complaining about, because she wouldn't allow any talk of anybody else who might have done it, and there were other people that people think might be in the frame, etc. But I think the judge has done really well. This is a big case, a high profile case. She's tried to do this case just in just in the bubble of, was Richard Allen there? This is the evidence, blah, 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 blah. She tried to know, it's not only the Odinism she hasn't allowed in and things like that. That is not allowed to have been, there wasn't allowed any talk about his previous mental state and all this sort of thing. So there's a lot of things she didn't allow in. She wanted this case to be held in the bubble of this case. With the evidence that's pertinent as far as Richard Allen's concerned. That's what she did. She made it a private trial, and he's been found guilty unanimously on all counts. Now, for the jury, it's funny with this case, because when the jury first went out, when the at first I was thinking, to me, it was always felt like he was guilty with the evidence that was presented. But then when it went a couple of days, because there were 4 days the jury were out, when it went a couple of days, then I did think, oh God, maybe this is going to be a hung jury, because you don't know why it's taking so long. Is it because, it's a 10-2 split or something like that? Anyway, but then it went a bit longer again. I thought then it was going to be guilty, because it's just the way it feels, isn't it? It's like, if there's not a quick verdict, you think, oh, they're going to come up with not guilty. Then it goes on a bit longer, and then it goes on even longer, and then you think, oh no, I'm thinking then they're going to come up with guilty. They were asking a lot of questions, clarifications, and of course, when there's 4 counts to make a decision on, so they're going through everything that's been presented. And each count, so really you're looking at 4 different verdicts. So it's bound to take a long time, really, if you look at it that way. And also people were saying that normally, I think it was Nancy Grace, and she'd know because she was a prosecutor. It was on Nancy Grace that I saw that the time that it takes to make a decision on a verdict is normally 4 times. Right, hang on, I'll try and work it out. Or it's divide by 4 the number of days of the trial, and you come up with how many days normally it takes them to make a verdict. I think that was it. I might have said that wrong. But anyway, basically what she was saying is it's more the time it took to make this verdict is more or less how it normally is, in her experience as a prosecutor. So you say the trial is, I don't know how long this trial took, say it was 16 days. You divide that by 4, that's 4 days, and that's how long it would take to reach a verdict. So, yeah, sorry, Jackie, but it actually was. Definitely was. Justice was 100% served, and I think this guy will end up confessing. Anyway, well, confessing again. So let's go back. We're going to look at the debrief by the news people that we've been sort of looking at. We're going to look at what they had to say. They've given very, very good coverage of this case. Now, as I say, although justice has been served, because I wish people would think more about Libby and Abbi and Libby and Abby's families and not be thinking about Richard Allen all the time, because that man, he slit the throat of 2 teenagers. I mean, it's foul what he's done. He should be allowed to confess, and maybe he can save his soul in the next life, but he's going to get a sentence of maybe I think it's between 40 and 65 years or something. He's going to get a big sentence, and he deserves every minute of it.
Murder for the deaths of Abbi Williams and Libby German in Delphi in 2017. Thanks for joining us for this final Delphi debrief here on WTHR Plus. In a moment, you'll hear reaction from our WTHR legal experts, Katie, Jackson, Lindsay. But let's begin in Delphi, where our team heard that verdict in court today. Bob Siegel and Emily Longnecker are there for us right now.
Scott, this was a day that the families of...
Yeah, we've watched these. We've watched this news channel a couple of times. We've watched this Delphi debrief before. They're very, very good. They were in the court, and so they can give. That's the only proper, because the trial wasn't televised. The only information really we can get is from people who are in the courtroom. But as time goes on and after the sentencing, then the jury will probably be able to be interviewed. Then nobody can talk to them yet. But we don't know what they saw, what they heard. People say no, justice not served. Obviously, it was served. You have to respect a verdict. If it had been the other way around, it's like the election result. It don't matter if you like Donald Trump or not. He's been elected by the people. That's democracy. That's how our system works. So we have to respect verdicts. We have to respect election results. And people who can't accept it, you might not be happy with it, but, he's got his option for appeal. He'll appeal. It won't make any difference because this man is guilty.
Abbi and Libby have been looking forward to for a long time. We know that it's been a long road here, not only, for the last 7.5 years since these girls were murdered, but in particular the last 2 years.
Yeah, please, someone, some of these people who supporting Richard Allen, think about what this family have gone through. Not only to lose, I think, some people have just lost sight of Abbi and Libby, and what's happened to them and what their family have gone through, and a lot of the problem is to do with in the beginning, the law enforcement, they did cock up this case because Richard Allen should have been arrested immediately. He phoned up the police, said it as soon as he saw that picture on the bridge of Bridge Guy and he knew it was him, he phoned the police. He phoned the police because he had to before somebody else did. And that's when he should have been arrested and charged. But something went wrong, didn't it? With the tip wasn't found till later. God bless that police receptionist that picked up on that. And also we've got to remember that Richard Allen, he never told his wife he'd been on the bridge that day. Could you imagine if you lived in a small place like that and there's this horrible murder, 2 girls, throat slit, murdered, and you don't say to your wife, oh God, I was there that day. If you're innocent, of course, if you're guilty, of course, you don't tell your wife. But if you're innocent, you don't say, oh my God, I was there, right near there. You know, you don't volunteer immediately, go to the police and say, oh, I was there that day. He volunteered information when he saw himself on that picture. Good for you, Libby, because Libby, thank God, she took that picture of him. You know, just fantastic. So he's as guilty as anything.
Years since Richard Allen was arrested, and the last 29 days since jury selection started, this process of assembling a jury to review all the evidence, to hear all of the testimony in this case. We've done that over the last 3+ weeks, and today, Emily,
Today's the
guilty.
day. Today is the day.
Yes.
Yeah. Today's the day. That's a phrase we've often heard the family say in the past 7.5 years when these girls first went missing and then were discovered. And for 5 long years, it was today is the day we're going to have a break in the case. Today is the day we're going to have a suspect. And then 5.5 years in, they had an arrest of Richard Allen. And now 2.5 years later, here we are. And today is a day that this family, both of these families, feel like justice is served. Today is the day.
So the jury came back after 4 days of deliberations. They were inside the courthouse during those deliberations, between 19 and 20 hours of time that they took. And there were 4 counts against Richard.
Yeah, so of course they say 4 days of deliberations, but the actual hours that they were deliberating were only 20 hours. So they did on average 5 hours every day. So
Richard Allen, felony murder of Abbi Williams, felony murder of Libby German, and then a count of murder involving Abbi, and the murder of Libby. Guilty, 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 guilty. Those are the 4 verdicts that came down today. And we want to walk you through what happened in the courtroom. WTHR 13 News, we were fortunate to have one of 12 media credentials to be inside the courtroom. So today I had a chance to be in the front row of the gallery in the courtroom, about 15 feet right behind Richard Allen when the verdict was read. And I can describe to you what happened inside the courtroom. I guess we'll backtrack just a little bit because it was around 1:30 today. Again, everyone, I think, starting to wonder, is this going to be a hung jury? Is this going to drag out? But around 1:30.
Yeah, no, it totally caught me by surprise. I was eating my tea, just getting ready for the members live stream that I normally do on a Monday. And then it all started. I wasn't sort of expecting anything, but yeah, it all sort of just hell broke loose.
30, we started to see some motion outside.
Right. We saw family. We saw the victims' families. We saw Abbi and Libby's families crossing the street here and entering on the south side of the courthouse in that way. And so we knew, or we thought, hey, something might be going on. We saw the drone go up. We did not, interestingly enough, you didn't, I didn't, our producers did. No one saw Richard Allen coming in. And that's something that we usually knew to spot when he was coming in. We didn't see that. I didn't see that. Then.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? They smuggled Richard Allen into the courtroom when they had a verdict, and nobody saw him going in. So they did that well.
If you went outside the courthouse, we all started to kind of gather outside the courthouse. There were, big crowds forming. The folks that had the media passes, they were lined up ready to go. If they got called in, they were going to call the media in first, then members of the public, people that we've seen for weeks camped outside the courthouse to wait to go in and hear testimony each day. They were all there, ready to go. Should they come out and say, okay, we have a verdict. And, we had been told ahead of time that the police wanted this to be very orderly going in. There wasn't going to be any running and racing towards the door. They were going to do it very orderly. And that's actually what ended up happening. Okay. It was very orderly.
So I got inside the courtroom at about 1:40 this afternoon. And when I got there, Richard Allen was already in the courtroom. The families of Abbi Williams and Libby German were inside the courtroom at that point. There was a huge police presence, about 25 uniformed officers and plainclothes officers around the perimeter of the courtroom on the inside. The attorneys, most of them were in there at this point. Interestingly enough, the only folks who were not in there as we started getting closer to the verdict was the family of Richard Allen. In fact, when Judge Gall came into the courtroom, she looked.
Now, I do feel sorry for his family because, well, I'd like to feel a bit sorrier. I'm finding it hard that as time goes on, the more difficult I'm finding it to feel sympathy for them, because I feel like, you know, his wife she's just in total denial. She can't accept the evidence that's right in front of her, and the fact that he never told her that he was on the bridge that day. You know, she just refusing to believe it. And I understand that, honestly, I do. It must be difficult to accept that. But as far as, you know, if that was me, I'd be relieved he wasn't coming home to me that night. You know, is she 100% certain that he's innocent? How could you be? You know, when he admitted he was there, he's confessed to it all those times. He had the same clothes on as the bridge guy. His bullet was there, all the things. How can she be 100% certain?
Looked at the defense table and said, "Where is Mr. Rosie?" And at that point, Andrew Baldwin notified the judge that he was downstairs with the family, with Kathy Allen and with Janice, Richard Allen's mother. So once they got up into the courtroom, at that point, the judge announced that she wanted to make sure there were no outbursts whatsoever in the courtroom. She wanted things, she said, for Mr. Allen, for the victims' families, we need this to be very orderly. And
yeah, she's been very good, the judge, I think. She's been very strict on all sides. You know, not only, you know, people say she has been biased one way or another. She hasn't. She just tried to keep the drama down as much as possible in this case. But the other thing I wanted to say was about Richard Allen's mother. Again, you know, I hope I never have to face that where, you know, but we never know. None of us know. This is it. I don't know how you can be 100% certain. You know, you just don't know what might happen in the future. And if your child did something terrible, you would, of course, still love him, I think. But, you know, you still got to be objective and know, you know, nobody's perfect. I mean, I'm not even saying maybe something as bad as that, but you've got to be aware of what, you know, oh God, how can I say? You've got to be sensible. As much as you might defend your child, and you'd always care about them, you'd always love them. But when you look at that sort of evidence and in something as extreme as this, and he's confessed to his mother, for God's sake, you know, calmly confessed to her, not under duress. You know, this under duress, it's ridiculous. He's not had psychosis. He's sat there in the court every day. He's fine. You know, it's just that is just been brought in by the defense as a way of trying to get him off this. And I don't think that will have worked with the jury, because for the reason that they've seen him confess calmly, etc. They've seen him, heard him, that we haven't. They know what he was, how he was when he confessed. He wasn't in psychosis. And the other thing is, I think what's failed for the defense with this argument of mental instability or whatever, that also, does that mean he's innocent? Maybe he was mentally unstable, but doesn't, you know, he obviously was mentally unstable to do what he's done. So I don't see that helps his defense. I've said that right from the beginning when they came out with it. You know, if he is crazy, like they say he's crazy, then to me that just makes it even more likely that he did it, because only a crazy person would do it.
And she said this before the jury was brought in. She said, "This has been a long haul. Regardless of what the verdict is, some people aren't going to be happy." And at that point, she asked everyone in the courtroom that if you're not unhappy, take your unhappiness outside, is what she said.
Yeah, so she, you know, she's not daft. She knew that whatever the verdict is, some people aren't going to be happy. I can't remember a more divisive case than this. Normally people are all united in the belief that they think someone's guilty or not guilty. I can't remember, maybe someone can remember but I can't remember a high profile case like this that was so divisive for people saying guilty or not guilty.
So again, wanting to make sure we had a pretty good sense at that point that there was not going to be any huge outbursts. She said if there had been any outbursts, folks would be escorted out of the courtroom by law enforcement, and that did not happen. At this point, the jury was brought in, and the jury came in at 2:19 this afternoon. And I got to tell you, in my mind, because this trial has taken 17 days, in my mind, this verdict was going to take a while to announce. Boy, was I wrong on that. I mean, this was so fast. The jury was seated at 2:19. The judge immediately asked if they had their verdict. The foreman of the jury, who was elected, he was juror number 30. He handed the verdict form over to the judge, and by 2:20, the verdict was being read. Guilty, 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 guilty on all 4 charges. And by 2:22, the jury was excused and they left the courtroom. So literally, the jurors were in there for 3 minutes. I want to explain kind of what happened when the verdict was read. Because I was so close to Richard Allen, I was able to look directly at him, and he gave almost no reaction at all. Andrew Baldwin, defense attorney, was sitting right next to him. He had his arm around Richard Allen. Right before the verdict was read, at times he was rubbing Richard Allen's head, which is very close shaven right now, as he's in the Cass County Jail, trying to comfort him. Very little reaction from the defendant. I was able to see the victims' families off just behind me to the left. And I saw Becky Patty, which is Libby German's grandmother. She was sitting with Mike Patty, her husband. The two of them, she was holding on to Mike's arm. As the verdict was read, the first guilty, I heard off to my left, yes. And I knew that had come, again, from the direction that came from. That was from the victims' families. And when I look back at Becky Patty, she put her head down on Mike Patty's shoulder, clutched him closely, got a smile on her face. A few moments later, she was crying a little bit, emotional. But again, no huge outbursts at that.
Yeah, so that's the grandmother. Just the thought of it. This is where I want people to concentrate their thoughts, not about Richard Allen. Concentrate their thoughts in this family and what they've been through and what they've still got to go through, because there'll be an appeal. They've got to go through the sentencing. Their sentence is for life. They're never getting their children, grandchildren back. They've missed out on all those things that they won't be seeing them get married, have children, graduate, all those things. Their lives were stopped by Richard Allen, guilty on all counts. Whether people like it or not, he's been found guilty. And, to me, the thoughts should be with the families of Libby and Abbi. And as I say, I'm struggling to find sympathy so much with Richard Allen's family, because they're not accepting any thought that he might be guilty or whatever. That, I think he's, Anyway, never mind. I mean, they're going through their own hell, and it must be hard. And I do feel for them, but not as much as I feel for Libby and Abby's parents and family, etc.
At that point, I was able to see off to my right. I was able to see Richard Allen's family. They looked angry. His mother and his wife were crying. It was shortly after that, Richard Allen looked back at them and he said, "Are you okay?" I didn't see their reaction to that. But for the most part, things in the courtroom were pretty subdued and pretty calm. And Richard Allen was let out in handcuffs. Before that, they had talked about when the sentencing was going to happen. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it was once then the judge and the jurors had left the courtroom, that's when all the emotion really happened. The judge didn't want to see it while she was in there, but as soon as the judge left the courtroom, at that point, the families started hugging and embracing each other. They stood up. They started hugging one another. The victims' families did. State police, they've been in this for the long haul for the last 7.5 years. Some of the most emotion I saw in the courtroom today was actually from state police. Superintendent Doug Carter was right in the front row, sitting just to.
Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, the police did cock everything up in the beginning. So it must be a relief for them because, they'll be aware that if they had done their job properly, it wouldn't have come to this. It wouldn't have gone on so long and there wouldn't be such divisions. So they'll be feeling a relief because otherwise, I think if he was found not guilty, they would feel responsible for that, and they should have because, they didn't deal with it very well as they should have done. So, so it's interesting to hear him talk about their emotion.
To my left, he was sitting there with his wife. They were holding hands. When the verdict was read, I noticed their hands, they grasped each other's hands tighter. Doug Carter put his head down in his hands, and I could see that he was very teary-eyed. He was crying. And the defense team, they stayed very calm and relaxed, almost as if they were expecting this result today from.
Well, they probably were expecting because they knew they had no defense. The only defense they had was to try and rubbish his confessions. But everything else they couldn't rubbish, could they? The video of him on the bridge that Libby took, they couldn't say that didn't exist. They couldn't even say it wasn't him. It was most clearly him. As much they could try and present, they were trying to put in a reasonable doubt, but even he admitted he was there, wearing those clothes and everything. So the only thing they could try and do was discredit the confessions. That's what they tried to do. That was all they had.
On the jury, the prosecuting team, on the other hand, they were embracing one another. Stacey Diener got up. She was hugging some of the investigators, and she was hugging Nick McClelland and Indiana State Police detective Jerry Holman, who has been instrumental through this case. He actually went over to Nick McClelland and he hugged the prosecutor and he kissed him on the cheek. Again, just I think relief and a lot of excitement that the jurors came back today with the verdict that the prosecution was hoping for. As far as the defense team, a disappointment, but there will be next steps, and we'll talk about that in a little while as well.
And there we were waiting outside. I don't know. I feel like at least 100 people, maybe more, waiting outside. Yeah. Media, local folks, people holding signs, some in support of Richard Allen, many more, I think, in support of the families of Abbi and Libby. And I heard sirens at one point, and I remember thinking, oh, is that Richard Allen coming? Is he coming here? Is he getting a police escort? And I know now, looking back at the timing, that was probably the jury being taken out of here, I think. But the first indication that I had that something probably had not gone the way that the defense wanted was I saw a man come out of the courthouse very quickly, and he's a man that we came to know would always sit with the Allen family in support of them, a friend, confidant, and he came out shaking his head and just hurried off pretty quickly. And then right after he came out, it was not a minute later, a reporter from Court TV came out, and she had a piece of paper. She was really quiet, and she just held it up like this, and it was hard to see. But so, everybody kind of leaned in. It was this moment, everyone kind of leaned in and got closer. And that's when you saw guilty, 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 guilty. And then, there it was. And people cheered. People.
Yeah, we watched that. Everyone was cheering outside the courtroom. No, obviously not everyone. There will have been some people who support Richard Allen. But, the defense seemed to realize that they, they hadn't done a good enough job to release him. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God.
Erupted in cheers. And some people, you heard some people not happy, but honestly, that was really, really drowned out by the amount of people cheering that were really happy to see this. So
a lot of emotion, Scott, in court today, especially in the latter part when the verdict was read, and some of that emotion spilled outside afterward. We saw the families hugging one another out there, and yes, there was quite a bit of emotion.
I mean, and this, the gag order is still in place, and we learned that. Kathy Allen did come outside, walked past the media, and if we have some tape of her briefly, if we want to just roll that now, that she spoke real quick. We want to take a listen. So Kathy Allen there crying and saying this is not over at all. And then soon after she came out, Indiana State Police, Ron Galavez, he came out, and we were thinking, okay, are we going to hear some kind of response from state police? And
so Richard Allen's wife came out saying it's not over at all. Is unfortunately, but fortunately, in my opinion, and for the family of Libby and Abbi, who are the most people who count, it is over. He's going to appeal, but I think the appeal, it will be worse for the defence. Now, it may be that they can bring in more things. They'll try and bring in some other things that they weren't allowed to bring in during the trial, but I don't think for 1 minute this conviction will be overturned, because what's it going to be overturned on? All the evidence that was presented to the jury. What else could be presented that would overturn this conviction? Anyway, who knows? But so they're going to appeal. So the family have still got quite a lot of torment to go through, unless this twonk actually confesses properly, like he has tried to confess, to be fair. The gag order is still going. So nobody can really comment properly who was involved in the case yet until after the sentence.
And here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
Oh, well, I say until after the sentence, as long as the judge lifts the gag order. I mean, the judge might keep it on until the appeal. I don't know. The appeal won't be till next year.
Judge Gall has not lifted the gag order, so we're not going to be able to make any type of public statement at this point. We'll be looking forward to having something scheduled a month from now following sentencing. So with that, that's all that we're going to be able to say at this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And that was it. That was it from state police. And so there it was. We knew that we were not going to get any kind of reaction from them, at least officially, beyond what you observed in the courtroom. With the happiness there that we saw. Right.
And so as Kathy Allen, Richard Allen's wife, said, this isn't over.
Right.
We know that there are next steps. One of the next steps, the very next step, would be a sentencing hearing. And the judge set a sentencing hearing for Richard Allen for December 20th. There was some discussion about whether they should set aside 1 day for that or 2 days for that. I know the defense said they would probably need about a half a day. They seem to indicate that they could kind of knock out. There's going to be statements from both sides, from both the prosecutor and the state, trying to convince the judge why she should either give a lighter sentence or a heavier sentence to Richard Allen on these counts. And he is facing significant time in prison.
45 to 65 years per charge, correct?
Yes.
And so now
yes.
will those run concurrent or consecutively? That's the decision there. And you would expect that during that sentencing, you're going to hear about Abbi and Libby and who they were as people and their lives lost. They would be 20 right now. Libby had just turned 14 in December before she died that night.
Yeah, about time we started hearing more about Libby and Abbi and not about stupid Richard Allen and, the murderer. It's about time. we started to hear more about Libby and Abbi.
Next February. So her birthday is coming up where she would be 21. So these young women, they would be, really just starting adulthood.
Victim impact statements.
Yes.
It has the potential, certainly, the sentencing to be very emotional as well. And then we've gotten every indication from the defense that if there was a guilty verdict, which we got today, that then there's going to be an appeal on the other side, and that can get going after the sentencing hearing.
After the sentence, right? Because then that they file an appeal, and then that triggers, it's my understanding, the court reporter to type up the transcripts, everything that we've heard during the trial, and then that's what starts it rolling, right? And then they file a brief, and then they have 30 days to file a brief, and then the state has 30 days to file a brief. So it will be some time before that happens, but we have to get to that sentencing first.
So Kathy Allen is correct in the fact that this is not the end of this whole process.
Right. And we've seen the defense talk about that and try and set that up. We know that there were other alternative theories that they had about how the girls were killed, and alternative suspects that they had wanted to bring into this trial. Judge Gall had ruled no, that's not going to happen, and it didn't. And so here they presented the defense as is, but you have to imagine if an appeal would be granted, that they would try and bring those in.
Yeah. So Scott, that is the rundown of what actually.
Now, going back to that Odinism rubbish that they were trying to bring in to cast aspersions. And, the Odinism, we looked at that in a video a while back. Odinism sort of comes from this white supremacy type thing. They're not going to kill two white girls in a sacrifice. It's the most ludicrous thing. If that's all you've got to defend somebody is to bring in this Odinism rubbish. Just the fact, even if we believed it, that, Odinists were out there, what are they going to kill two young white girls for? Odinists and the sort of ethos that they have, if they're going to kill anybody, it's not going to be two 14-year-old white girls. So it was ridiculous anyway. And that's why the judge threw it out, because there wasn't enough evidence. God, people go on about evidence. It's amusing, really, isn't it? Because of the people that are whinging on that, Richard Allen, there wasn't enough evidence to convict him. But they thought that this Odinism thing should be brought in, even though there wasn't enough evidence. There's enough evidence for that, even though there's none. But the whinging that the lot of evidence that is against Richard Allen, the only thing really that there isn't is DNA. But don't forget, there's no DNA from any other possible perpetrator either. So, just honestly, people, sometimes the things that they say, it's definitely Odinism as well. Odinism, what's your evidence? I haven't got any evidence, don't need any evidence, I've just got a feeling or whatever. And then, what about Richard Allen? There's not enough evidence.
Actually happened inside the courtroom today and outside the courtroom today, and now there's going to be a lot of discussion about whether this jury, who devoted 29 days, 26 of those days being sequestered from their families and away from their community in Allen County. There will be a lot of discussion and debate about whether or not they got it right. But we do know, as of tonight, Richard Allen guilty on all 4 counts of murder that he faced in the deaths of Abbi Williams and Libby German.
All right, Bob and Emily, we'll get back to you there in Carroll County in a moment. Let's get some legal analysis tonight from our legal expert, Katie Jackson-Lindsay, a former deputy prosecutor and current defense attorney. Katie's been with us every night as we've been doing a deep dive into this case. What is your first reaction on this guilty verdict?
Well, as an attorney, your first reaction.
This woman, I can't bear this woman, to be honest. She's a defence attorney for a start, so I never understand how I know someone's got to do it. I'll never really understand how they do it, especially a woman, defending people that are guilty, who've often done things against women. But anyway, that's what she does, and somebody's got to do it, as I say. But she's, listening to her talk, you can tell she thinks he's innocent, or I just, because she said all the way along that she thought he was going to be found innocent. She's finding it. Look, he's looking at her a bit smug. She's finding a way of, she's trying to be gracious, but it never quite happens.
Reaction is always respect, because it is what it is and it's final. Processing it and just thinking it through, honestly, I was a bit surprised initially. I think towards the end there, some of the juror questions led us to at least assume that there was some doubt on their part. Some of the conflicts in the evidence between the state's case and the defense case, I think, lended themselves to reasonable doubt on the part of the jury. And then they were out for a little while. And so you started to wonder if they might.
She doesn't know. She wasn't in that jury room. So they obviously didn't have any reasonable doubt, because they found him guilty on all four counts. So she does, she said, no, I think there was some reasonable doubt. She doesn't know that. She's just trying to justify what she's been saying for 3 weeks, which is that he's probably going to be found. It's either going to be a hung jury or is going to be innocent. So she's sort of having to eat her words a bit now.
Might be able to reach a verdict. So once the verdict came in and we knew what it was, there was a bit of surprise initially, but it is what it is, and that's how our system works. So 100% respect for that verdict.
100% respect for that verdict. There wasn't surprise from right-thinking people. So there was surprise from some people, but there wasn't surprise from people who, looked at it in a more objective way. All those people there, they're not surprised, they're happy. So, in fact, I'm going to fast forward her, because I'll start getting a bit snarky, because she's irritating. He was found guilty, and that's it.
I think we should absolutely expect that, whether we hear from them. Abbi and Libby were, outside of the gruesome details that came across in the courtroom.
What is the likely sentence that Richard Allen is going to face after being found guilty on these 4 charges?
Well, it's hard to say the likely sentence. What I can say is that in that penalty range of 45 to 65 years, the court will start at the advisory sentence of 55. She will
45 to 65 years. She's always wrong, everything she says. So actually, I am going to fast forward her. Let's listen to people who know what
to the trial court. If it's not favorable to Richard Allen, transcripts. These transcripts are going to be voluminous. We're talking.
Abbi and Libby went missing on February 13th, 2017. Yeah. You've been there pretty much every step of the way in this whole process.
Yeah. I mean, this is a full circle moment for me as a professional. I was thinking about the families today, how many times they trusted us to let us into their homes and speak with us. I was thinking particularly about learning when I interviewed the Patties in that first year. They had gotten a puppy in December, the December before Libby was killed. And so just seeing them during this trial and saying, how's the puppy doing? And the puppy's not a puppy anymore. And just you get to know these families. Anna Williams.
That's really sweet. So she's been following this case right from when it first happened 7 years ago.
All of the times that they were willing to speak about the milestones in their daughters' and granddaughters' lives that they were missing. When you talk to them, they watched other kids go to the prom. They watched other kids graduate from high school, and other young people in their daughter and granddaughter's lives, their class reach these other milestones that Abbi and Libby were not there for. I think that they've taken this awful, tragic, horrendous unthinkable thing, and they've built a softball park in the girls' memories. They have had food drives at the holidays in the girls' memories, asking you to drop off food that for food pantries that they've handed out. And so they have taken the worst possible thing that could have ever happened to two families and tried to make a difference with that. And I was thinking about that today. And so just from this report.
So, this is it, when families try and turn a really negative thing into a positive thing. It's so nice. We've talked about this before. People deal with grief in different ways. Some people that have lost a loved one, like in these brutal ways, they go within themselves and they want privacy. They don't want any publicity whatsoever, or anybody to talk about them whatsoever. And then you get other families, they try and turn things like Gabby Petito's family, etc., try and turn things into a positive, because when you lose your child like that, and you want to feel that they were here to do, for a reason. You want to put some meaning into their lives, and that's what these girls' families have done, and that's what should be concentrated on more. Not about Richard Allen. He's guilty. And let's talk about Abbi and Libby and their families.
Reporter's perspective, you feel a responsibility to cover something like this with dignity and with respect and get it right. And so, it was important to be able to cover this process as well, and to see it through, right? So often we don't get to do the follow-ups and see things through. And so it was important to do that. And I'm thankful that I got a chance to be in this moment, in this experience, as difficult as it was sometimes, and it really was, but not at all what it was like for these families, and it was, they're under this gag order right now, but they have posted some things on social media tonight, and I don't want to bring this up and take the focus back to them. Becky Patty posted this picture tonight on social media a couple hours, and this is that's Libby as a little girl in a superhero cape, and I just thought that this was so fitting, because the police have called these little girls heroes, many times, more than victims, but heroes, and referenced how Libby had the presence of mind that
she's getting quite emotional, isn't she? So yeah, Libby definitely. Both, they helped solve their own murders. Bless.
Okay, to roll on Bridge Guy and capture video of her killer. And police have talked about how that really helped them in this case. And Mike Patty always has said of his granddaughter, she had intuition. She had keen intuition, and she was not afraid to speak up for herself. So she had the presence of mind that day to roll on Bridge Guy, to roll on that man. And I think it's, part of the reason, certainly, that we're here today. I mean, law enforcement certainly thinks so. So they undoubtedly, those little girls were heroes. And we also heard police say that Libby used to say to her grandmother, she was going to grow up and help police solve crimes. And we heard in that closing statement from Nick McClellan saying, that is exactly what she did.
Oh my God, that's given me chills. So she said she was going to grow up and help police solve crimes. Of course, she didn't know it was going to be her own murder and her best friend's murder. So it just chokes me up every time I think of them saying that the blood on her face was mixed with tears. And I do think that Libby probably watched Abbi die and knew what was coming for her. And that's why her injuries were worse, and more jagged, etc., because she probably fought. I think Abbi didn't fight just because he probably took her completely by surprise. She probably just wasn't expecting that. So I think that's why her wounds were more, just complete surprise. But, he couldn't kill them both at the same time, could he? So I feel like the poor Libby, she probably had to watch that, and then she probably fought a bit more, maybe her head going from side to side. And there were tears mixed with the blood on her face. We mustn't forget what this man has done, what Richard Allen has done. Guilty on all
Here,
counts.
she helped police solve this crime, and she brought her best friend. She brought
Took
Abbi along with her. And I think that was so poignant when he said that, and it just kind of, I think, made the hair on my arms, stand up when I heard that, because he couldn't be more correct. And Kelsey Siebert, Kelsey German, Libby's older sister, she went on X and posted this quote. We're going to bring that up here. It says, "Crime is almost always senseless and the justice system imperfect. A guilty verdict does not undo the damage of crime. It cannot bring back the victims." And I think, as we say, these beautiful girls are not coming back, and that's something their families have had to grapple with all these years, and this town has grappled with it. We saw today a sign in a local restaurant that said, "Abbi and Libby, justice will be served," and that sign has hung up here for many, many years in this community, and it was hanging up today.
Yeah, because you've got to remember, if you lived in that community, you wouldn't want him to be released. Imagine him being, released, and you knew that he did, or you felt that he had done it. I mean, now we know he did it because he's been found guilty. God, they would. He and his family would have to move out the area. Anyway, we don't have to. Luckily, he's not going anywhere.
Along with, some of the posters that have hung up for years here. Looking for information in these crimes. So this town really was changed from it. And but people, when you talk to people in this town, they want you to know that Delphi is bigger than this awful thing that happened, and that there are good people here, and that they come together and that they help each other. And certainly we saw that they did that in the search for these young girls. We saw that the night, the day these girls were.
Because these things that happen, they do define these places, don't they? Like Delphi now will always be remembered for this. People, a lot of people, certainly all around the world, wouldn't have even known anything about Delphi, never probably heard the name. And then suddenly these girls are murdered, and now, I bet there's not many parts of the world that they haven't heard about Delphi. It's like in the UK with the Soham murders, with Holly and Jessica. Soham, that's another little village, isn't it? Will always be associated with the murders of Holly and Jessica. Saddleworth Moor in Manchester will always be associated with the Morse murderers, because that's where they buried a lot of their victims. So these sort of Chapeltown in Leeds will always be associated with the Yorkshire Ripper, and Jack the Ripper, I think, operated there, or was that London? So it must be awful if you sort of live in these areas. Imagine if you lived in a village, or a small community. Delphi is a very small community. And then something like this happens, and anytime you're going to meet someone, they're going to say, well, where are you from? You say Delphi, they're going to go, oh, what did you think about, the Abbi and Libby? It's bound to be associated forever.
Were found that night. This entire community was in a church just down the road from here, saying prayers and coming together. And we saw that. So this is a community that comes together and has rallied around the families of these two girls. Kelsey also posted, I want to show you this last thing that she posted on Instagram. It shows, you can see Libby and Abbi there with their little glow stick glasses. And she posted this: "Thank you for all of your love, support, and prayers. We truly couldn't have gotten here without it. I'll share my thoughts once the gag order is lifted and the holidays pass in December." So we know the holidays are coming up, not an easy time when you've lost someone that you love, and particularly like this. And so these folks are, there's going to be a sentence handed down December 20th, and then here come the holidays. So they're going to, I think, get through that. And every indication that at some point they're going to speak on this. They're going to speak on this. So.
One of the things that really struck me during this trial is the fact that Abbi and Libby's families, in the middle of the night, would bring food to the journalists that were waiting overnight to be able to cover. this trial, and to the people, many of whom had traveled from all parts of the country to be here to witness this event that happened over the last month. Here you have families that, I mean, face it, it's been 7.5 years, but these families are still grieving every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they were coming out to take care of the people who were there to witness this event. That really struck me during this process. And also the fact that the Allen family, Richard Allen's wife, his daughter, his mother, you know, in something like this, that, you know, they want to be in court.
Sure.
And for the families to be present, you know, there's no place to hide from all the people and all the interest in this case. And yet they were so gracious and kind and understanding and patient through this process with the hordes of people who had gathered here. And you can certainly, I can feel their pain as well.
Absolutely.
You know, we had a verdict today, but there's no celebration.
No.
On a day like today.
No.
You know, obviously the verdict went the way that one side was hoping that it would, but there's no real celebration on other side. This is just a horrible event all the way around. And I got to tell you, the respect that I have for these jurors, we were in the courtroom.
We saw, you know, some tough stuff. We saw some tough stuff, and they saw some tough stuff. And as we talked about, these are the things you can't unsee.
Yes.
And so I would imagine that, you know, those people that sat on that jury that.
Well, they're getting emotional, so God knows how it was for every, you know, for actual family at that. It's definitely been, you know, a real emotional roller coaster for everyone, I think, but obviously especially for the families. But yeah, thank God he's guilty.
There are things that they can't unsee too, and
I think it's got to change. You know,
it does.
I feel changed from being through this experience, and you know, to see the bodies of two teenagers. That's a hard thing to see.
It is.
It's a hard thing to report on. It certainly has to be hard for a juror to sit there and have to be logical and rational and put all these pieces together. So utmost respect for what these jurors went through and giving their time, and the civic duty and responsibility that they served is really extraordinary. Before we send it back to you, Scott, one other point that we'd like to make, in addition to seeing Emily and myself and Samantha Johnson on this show every night, the work that Scott, you have done, and Katie Jackson Lindsay, we're the folks that you've seen on air, but behind the scenes, I've counted 20 other people, at least from WTHR, who has made our coverage both on air and on our website, and these Delphi debriefs take.
Okay, so I think he's more or less finished now. Oh, that was so sad seeing him get so upset. So, do you know, it must be, imagine how the jury feel, because they had such a massive decision to make. I'm sure they took it seriously. That's why it took those 20 hours, you know, instead of just making an instant decision. They've gone back through over all the evidence. That's what makes me feel there's no way that an appeal's going to make any difference here. I think the jury considered everything properly and correctly, and I think the right verdict has been reached. So anyway, I'm off to work now. But so thank you for watching. Please don't forget to leave your DNA on the like button and subscribe if you're not already, because it's free. And I will be doing that now. I was supposed to do a members live last night, and then of course everything went mad with this. So I'm going to do the members live tonight instead. I think we'll just have a general chit chat about things, and I've got a big surprise, and we'll do that tonight. So thank you for being a member. And if you're not a member, please consider being a member. And I will see you really soon in the next video, and I'm going to put Abbi and Libby's picture up because as I say, this is what this is all about. Libby and Abbi, love and prayers go out to their family. I'm going to play a little bit of music, and thank you for this result. Thank you for the verdict. Thank you, jury, and I hope that their family gets some comfort from it, even though I know that it can't bring them back. So I'll see you really soon in the next video, and until then, may your God always go with you. Bye.